Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. The title for this one goes like this. Brother uninvited me from his wedding because his fiance found out we dated in college, but 6 days before the wedding, I received a call asking if they could host the wedding at my property for free because that's the least I could do. My brother, male 32, and I, male 29, are estranged. I was a sickly kid. As my parents told me, I was born premature, and I was a very frail kid. Naturally, a lot of my parents' attention went towards me. When I was 2, I contracted pneumonia, and I was in and out of the hospital a lot. My immune system was largely compromised as a result of these illnesses early on in my life, and my mom and dad had to be very careful with me. Things got better by the time I turned 6. As such, I don't really have memories of being so sick as an infant. I only remember being a young and slightly unhealthy kid. My conscious memories are of when I had gotten better. However, I also remember that my brother Jared hated me. If I asked him to play with me, he said no. If I asked him for help, he said no. Anything that I wanted to do with him was always a resounding no. Thus, I learned early on to be self-reliant, and I realized that my brother did not particularly like me. And before everyone comes at my parents saying that he might have felt overlooked because of my sickness, I have seen my parents try very hard to have good relationships with both Jared and me. I cannot vouch for the times for which I have no conscious memories, but ever since I got better, my parents have always tried to be more involved in his life and have tried to make up, so to say, for the times they couldn't be with him. But that has been of no use because he's just a bitter man. By the time I was 9 and he was 12, I stopped interacting with him. I had my friends in school, and he had him. And it was like we weren't brothers, just roommates. Gradually, things changed a lot. My mother gave birth to my sister Daisy, now 18 female when I was 11. I finally had a sibling that I could foster a relationship with, and I grew very close to her. Jared, on the other hand, was livid. He had told mom and dad during the pregnancy itself that he hated me, and he would hate his sister, and that he wanted nothing to do with her. It broke my mother's heart, but there was effectively nothing that she could do. I stepped in willingly. I have doted on Daisy since the day that she was born, and we are very close to each other. Despite the age gap, Jared moved out when Daisy was 4, and he rarely came home, so she doesn't even know him that well. When I went to college, I made it a point to keep in touch with her, write her letters, video call her, and stuff of that sort. Jared doesn't really talk to anyone other than mom and dad, and to be honest, that suits both Daisy and me. I never attempted to smoothen my relationship with him because he stayed hostile towards me till the day that he left for college. I respect his wishes of not being in touch, and I don't really care anyway, so it's all cool. 6 months ago, Jared announced that he was getting engaged to his long-term girlfriend on Instagram. I don't follow him on Instagram, so I didn't know who his fiance was. Mom and dad were pretty upset that they got to know from a social media post, but they were too scared of him to say anything. They sent out the invitations to the wedding a month ago. To my surprise, I was invited, and so was Daisy. This was startling to both of us, because we had not expected Jared to extend kind of an olive branch, even if only for appearances. It was quite unlike him, considering how he had practically ignored both of us all his life, and especially after he had moved out. Both of us were contemplating not going, but mom begged us to go, because she thought that this might finally be the moment that all 3 of us would become close, just as siblings are supposed to be. It meant a lot to my parents, so I decided I would end up going. I RSVP'd that I would come, and he just sent an okay in response, and that was the end of the conversation between us. 2 weeks ago, Jared called me screaming into the phone. He was largely incoherent, but I knew he was livid about something with the way that he was yelling. I asked him to calm down, but he just kept on saying that I had dated his fiance, and I should have told him about it. I said that there had to be a misunderstanding because I didn't even know who he was marrying. When he told me what her name was and where she had studied from, I could faintly recall being involved with a girl of that name in college. After I confirmed her identity, I told him that yes, I had dated his would-to-be wife for 5 weeks in my first year of college, but I honestly didn't understand why that warranted such an extreme reaction from him. Moreover, I hadn't even known that she was his fiancée, but she was bound to have known that I was his brother. Why hadn't she told him that she had dated me? I'm sure he would have shown her photos or talked to her about his family. He didn't really have anything to say to that, and all that he kept repeating was that it was very awkward with this new piece of significant information and that he did not want my sleazy hands anywhere near his wife or his wedding. I told him that he was wildly overreacting because there was nothing of any significance between me and her anyway, and that I did not like what he was insinuating. I not so politely told him to eat S-word because could not think beyond repulsive things. I also said that I would not be attending the wedding, not because he was barking like a rabid dog, but because his unnecessary accusations did not sit well with me. And then I disconnected the call. I called on my parents and told them what had happened, and I told them that there was no way in hell that I would be attending the wedding now. My dad was furious at Jared, and he called him up to knock some sense into him. But Jared was not willing to see sense. When Dad pestered him, he said that he would uninvite both Mom and Dad from the wedding if they did not stop insisting that I attend or that we reconcile. That shut them up, and I told them that I really didn't want them to create any controversy because of me and that I hadn't really wanted to go to the wedding anyway. I was going only because it meant a great deal to Mom, but now that Jared had again chosen to make things ugly, I had no intention of reconciling with him now or ever again. He had always been on thin ice with me, and this was the final straw. My mother was heartbroken, but she too agreed that there was no point in escalating the situation and reluctantly accepted that this is how her 3 children are going to be. Daisy vehemently refused to go to the wedding without me, as I was expecting, so it was just my parents attending from the family. An important thing that will come up later is that I am quite well off for my age. I landed a well-paying job straight out of college, and I invested in some properties over the years, so I now have substantial passive income. My own house, where I live, is a beautiful property with a huge yard. I have been meaning to adopt pets, and the yard and area were keeping that in mind. It's a stunning property, if I may say so myself, and I host parties and invite people over very frequently. I had once hosted a family Christmas dinner at my house, and Jared had come for that, so he knows where I live, and he had surprisingly good things to say about my house. I also hosted a post-wedding party for one of my closest friends last year, and it went very smoothly, and tons of aesthetic photos were taken. If you can see where this is going, you are far more far-sighted than I am. I got a call from Jared this morning, saying that he wanted to meet and had something important to discuss with me. I told him that I would not be wasting my time in meeting with him, and whatever he had to say could be said over call. He was a little hesitant at first, and tried to insist on meeting, but I was adamant. After a few minutes of failed persuasion, he said that I had caused his fiancée great emotional distress, so much that she had been wanting to call off the entire wedding. I was astounded. I told him that I hadn't met his fiancée even once, and neither had I contacted her, so I really did not know what he was talking about. If his fiancée were upset over a brief dating episode from 11 years ago, I really did not have anything to say about her level of maturity. He said that his fiancée Jenna was rethinking the entire wedding because of me and our history. She felt that it was extremely weird that she was marrying one brother and had been involved with the other. I asked him to calm the F down because I genuinely did not know what history he was talking about. I told him that he needed to know the length and extent of our involvement because this was getting out of hand. I told him that Jenna and I met in college and we shared a few classes. We used to help each other study for a bit and started dating. After a few weeks together, and we realized that we were not compatible at all and that this wasn't going to work out. The quote-unquote relationship broke amicably, and she almost immediately started seeing someone else. She also dropped out after another semester, and we never had touch after that. In fact, I hadn't spoken to her outside of group settings after our breakup, so I really don't know what she was harping about, and how us being involved was something so significant that was making her rethink the entire wedding with her partner of the last 6 years. Jared did not say anything, but kept on repeating that she was really upset and that I owed her an apology. I laughed in his face and told him to piss off. I told him that I was a grown man now, and while he was used to getting his way and bullying and strong-arming into doing things and taking the blame as kids, that was a thing of the past, and that I was not going to apologize to her. None of this was making sense to me, and I wasn't willing to be involved in their low-grade drama anyway. He then started getting angry, saying that I was disrespecting both his wife and his authority as an elder brother. I had lied to him, had consciously chosen to never admit that Jenna was my girlfriend at some point, and corrupted the sanctity of their union. Now, in order to compensate for all the drama that my involvement with the bride had cost us, the least I could do was sincerely apologize for this turn of events, and if even then Jenna did not forgive me, I could offer to hold the wedding at my place. I burst out laughing when I heard that. I told him that I didn't know what delusional land he and his little wifey were living in, but there was no way in hell that I was apologizing to an entitled brat, let alone offering my home as compensation. A compensation for what? That was when my brain started working. I told him that he had known Jenna for 6 years. How did they just come to know that she had a history with his brother? How did it take them 6 years to talk about me, or about her dating history? It was much more likely for her to have known beforehand that I was Jared's brother than for me to randomly assume that his fiance was the same woman I had dated for 40 days, 11 years ago. I really didn't understand how they found it remotely logical to blaze their guns at me when Jared hadn't spoken to me for the last 14 years of my life. I told them that there was no way I was giving access to my house to them, and if they even tried coming in, I would call the police and he could F off for all I cared. I disconnected the call, and since then, I have had both him and his precious soon-to-be wife spam me with calls and texts, threatening me to let them have their wedding at my place. It really boggles me how they can be so entitled. I have spoken to my dad about the entire drama that happened, and he just heaved a big sigh of exasperation. He said that mom might try to press me into saying yes to maintain the peace, but he would understand if I said no. I told him that no matter what, my answer would not change. Jared needed to stop being such a douche and understand that the world does not revolve around him. I know I am in the right, but I also feel weird thinking that my mom and dad want me to cave in, even though they have not expressed this to me directly. I could very well just have the wedding here and be done with it, but I really don't want to, and now I don't know what to do. Guys, I did some snooping around. I had a really bad feeling about what Jared was asking me to do, and I knew that there was something else going on beneath the surface. So I called him up and said that I was considering giving them access to my house because I didn't want to cause any trouble for them. That eased him up, and he said something like, "I'm glad you chose the right thing for once." I got to talking more and tried to find out what the original venue for the wedding was. I had to be a little crafty about it because I didn't want to ask him directly, and he's daft enough to not understand when someone is trying to get information from him. I got the name of the venue, and I got to work. At first, I thought that I would get in touch with the owner myself, but then I felt that I would be taking too big of a risk. So I called up my friend Sean and told him to find out. So Sean is a bit of a character, and he has ways and means of getting things done. We've been friends since college, and I knew he would find out what happened. I don't know what he did, but within 12 hours, he gave me a call, saying that he knew what had happened. He had gone around inquiring if the venue was available for a shotgun wedding on the day of Jared's wedding, and the owner said yes. Sean started making small talk with the guy and tried to know how the venue, which is quite popular, was not booked. That too on a Saturday. This is where the drama starts. The owner told Sean that the venue had been booked by a couple who had made 1/3 of the payment as a deposit months ago. The bride was also a personal friend, and that is precisely why he took only 33% as the deposit. However, as the wedding got closer, he tried to make the couple pay the remaining amount. If not the entire thing, then at least 1/3 more, but they kept on coming with excuses. This is after already having offered them a discount because the bride was close with his daughter. He said that finally, after weeks and weeks of trying and failing to get them to pay up, he had to cancel the booking because he had understood that they were never going to pay. Sean did his part, acting all shocked, and cussed them out in front of him, and then told the owner that he would get in touch with him for his own wedding. So now I know why Jenna had gone through the entire mortifying ordeal of feeling horrible about dating two brothers and marrying one of them. It was about my house and their wedding. Their wedding literally hinged on my lending them my property, and Jared knew that being polite to me and asking decently would get him nowhere. considering our history and his treatment of me in the past. The entire ruse was an attempt to get me to cow down and offer my place so that they proceed to have a wedding on the same day. His supposed wedding is now just 5 days away, and I don't know how, but I am not letting him set foot inside the house. Let's see if he even manages to have a wedding. It's now 3 days to D-Day. I avoided Jared's call all day yesterday, waiting for him to text so that I have proof that I haven't committed to giving my house for the wedding. He took the bait and sent me a barrage of messages, all of them implying that I hadn't yet confirmed the availability of the house. I have responded to him, saying that I am still thinking, and I'm not sure, and that I will let him know soon. He blew up at me, all via text of course, saying that the wedding was 3 days away now, and he would need to alter the invitations, so I really didn't have the luxury of time to let him know soon. It had to be ASAP. I left him on red, and he started calling me again. When that didn't work, he tried getting mom involved, but I didn't receive her calls as well. Mom and dad have been texting me continuously, but I haven't responded to them. Dad called me up and said that Jared was making a huge fuss about my indecision and that he needed to know soon. I just told Dad that I was sick and busy, and I didn't know if I could get my house cleaned in the next 3 days, in time for the wedding. I also told him not to tell Jared about these issues, and he agreed. I told Dad if I was unable to host the wedding at my place, Jared could always have it at the original venue, and Dad said yes. That was the plan, and he had anyway been discouraging my lovely older brother into changing venues right before the wedding. My suspicions were confirmed. Mom and Dad did not know what had happened, and I knew I wasn't going to be the one to burst their bubble. Had I done that, they would have asked me to compromise and forced me to host the wedding at my place. I just told Dad that I had a massive headache and I was going to sleep. I'm gonna screw Jared really hard this time. The wedding is the day after tomorrow. I have hired a few cleaning guys to clear out my yard. Don't worry, I'm not hosting the wedding at my place. This is just for appearances. I want to deceive Jared into thinking that he will ultimately get to host his wedding here so that he doesn't make other arrangements. I have also sent a picture of the men clearing the yard on the family group chat, to which Jared has recently been added. I haven't confirmed anything to him though, and he has begun badgering Daisy to talk to me. She called me up, and I told her that she should not, at any cost, talk to Jared again. What Jared and the rest of my family don't know is that I've taken an entire month of work from home, and I'm traveling out of state for a change of scenery. The tickets are booked, and my flight is at 3 a.m. tomorrow, so essentially in like 12 hours. There will be just 1 day left for Jared's wedding, and he might just not have a wedding anyway. I have just landed, guys, but my phone has exploded. Right before my flight took off, I texted on the group chat that I thought about it a lot and that I wasn't comfortable with Jared and Jenna having their wedding at my place. The thing is that since I had sent that video of getting my yard cleaned, apparently Jared assumed that it was for his wedding, and he changed the invites and asked the guests to come to my place. I told him tough shit, and that if he tries anything smart, I'll call the police and have him and his guests arrested for trespassing and vandalism. I then turned my phone off. I have over 1,000 messages now, and I don't have the energy to read them if I'm being honest. I have called Sean up. He has a spare key to my house, and I've told him to stay there and keep watch if something happens. I also have cameras installed, so I don't really need anyone there. But just in case something happens, or Jared and Jenna try to do something and act smart, I told him to call the police in an instant. Knowing Jared, I know he's going to try and enter, and oh boy, if he does that, I am going to get the police involved. It happened, guys. Jared and Jenna have been arrested. Sean called me in the middle of the night, saying that this was the most epic day of his life. He said that he was busy all day trying to get the vendors and decorations to F off. He also told them that they had the venue wrong and that there was no wedding happening at this place. This is happening around 11 a.m. The wedding is scheduled for 5 p.m. They called Jared up, saying that the plot was not vacant as he had told them, but actually had someone living in it, who was refusing to grant them permission to do anything. Jared asked them to put Sean on the line, but he refused, saying that he would only talk to the man in person. Jared comes home. It's 12 p.m. by this time. He doesn't even recognize Sean and says that this was his brother's property. so Sean was trespassing and that he would have Sean arrested. Sean just whipped out papers. That little bugger had gone on and drafted an entire rent agreement for a month so that Jared cannot question his authority. This was entirely his idea, by the way. He copied my signatures, and the contract basically said that I had rented out the place to him for a month and that neither did he know nor he would allow any wedding on the premises. The back and forth happened for a long time, but since Jared did not know that Sean and I were best friends, he tried to bribe Sean. He told him to let him have the wedding here and that he would cover Sean's rent payment for the entire month. Sean disagreed. They kept on fighting, but ultimately Jared had to leave. This went on till 2 p.m. The wedding is in 3 hours. The plot is barren, and the bride and groom have nowhere to go. Jared apparently also sent Dad to do the talking, but when Dad saw Sean, he just chuckled. They had a couple of beers together, and Dad went back. He had told Sean that he would tell Jared that Sean did not agree. It's almost 4 p.m. now. Jared and Jenna came in a last-ditch attempt, but Sean did not even open the door. In this entire mess, Jared forgot to inform his guests that there was a slight change in plans, that the wedding was not happening at the new location, aka my house. By 4:40, people started gathering around the house, honking and yelling, but Sean did not open the door. The guests probably called Jared and Jenna, who thought that they could just force their way inside and have the wedding somehow anyway. This was what Sean was waiting for. Just as all the guests came swarming in, he called the police. The police were there in no time, and Sean explained the entire thing to them. I was his friend, and I had rented out the property to him for a month, but I had warned him that something like that could happen, and I had not given permission for anything. Jared tried to spin it around and say things like he had permission, but when the officer asked for a proof, he had nothing to show. The officer insisted on looking at the text between me and him and was clearly implicated. So now Jenna and Jared have been charged with trespassing, and my parents have refused to bail them out. The guests have gone. Jared is unmarried and in jail. I'm holidaying in Cali, and life is good. And that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.